everybody, welcome to the Faith and Fandom podcast. My name is Hector Miray. Thank you for joining us here on the Love Thy Nerd podcast network, where you can find lots of other great podcasts. You can also find us on YouTube at youtube.com/at Faith and Fandom LTN for lots of other great interviews from wrestlers to poets to entrepreneurs to writers, artists, and all sorts of different things. Today, I am joined by the indomitable Ashely Cox of Fangirling Over Jesus. Hi, Ashely.
Howdy.
Um, and has a girthy amount of creative experience, con experience, church experience, and life experience. So we're gonna be chatting it up today. Um, so Ashely, I know that one of the things that usually happens when you and I start talking about stuff is me asking you, have you watched X or yet, or Y yet, or seeing have you the things you've caught up on. What do you feel like started you on your geeky pop culture rabbit trail, and what are the things that you are still struggling to catch up to?
I'll start with your second question first because you're right. You're like, have you seen this yet? Have you seen this yet? So I still need to watch Avatar: The Last Airbender, and I still need to watch One Piece so that I can figure out all of that, all of that stuff.
Please take this and lock it hard into your brain.
Okay.
Watch everything else you need to watch before One Piece.
Because it's got so many episodes, right?
Yeah, it's coming up on 1200.
Oh my gosh.
Like I stopped at 300 and something because I want to write a chapter about what's I just watched, and I don't want to like add more content to it. But effectively you can watch Clone Wars twice and be where I'm at in One Piece. Um
I'm doomed.
no, wait, Clone Wars is 150 hours, right? Yeah, so maybe I don't know. Either way, it's about where
I
I'm
don't
at.
know. Yeah,
But
sounds
Avatar
about
is
right.
a very tight 3 seasons and you're out.
Oh,
Um,
it's only 3 seasons. Okay. See, I need to get Netflix. We ran out of Netflix because we were using my roommate's sister's account, and then Netflix did the whole geolocating
yeah,
thingamabobber, and yeah, so we'll
but
work on it.
yeah, it's a tight 3 seasons and out, and it's one of the few shows that absolutely sticks the landing.
hmm
So like when it ends, it's a great ending. Um,
Okay. I do also need to catch up on because I got COVID a few weeks ago. I have not even had a chance to start Rings of Power season 2, which is a bummer because I really loved Rings of Power season 1. I absolutely loved the finale, and I really am excited about the season, but I haven't had a chance to catch up on that. And then I think the Agatha series started, and I didn't realize that because again, still recovering from COVID. I still have the cough as a souvenir. And yeah, so I need to catch up on those.
I'm gonna say
Um,
this.
yeah.
Uh, season two of Rings of Power
Hmm.
leaps and bounds better
Really? Cool.
because the
And I
big
liked
twist,
season 1.
the big yeah, and I liked season one.
Yeah.
Um, because of the big twist that it left you with at the end of season one.
Yeah.
um, you're actually seeing all the rings being made and what it does to everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes all of the Lord of the Rings better because most of the
hmm
time we just hear the little prologue of like this many rings for this people. And when you actually see the process of what they're doing with it, ooh wee,
mm
super good.
Okay.
Um, and some of the actions just bonkers dope. Um,
hmm
but no, I've watched the first 6 episodes,
hmm
and it's our first introduction to a live action Tom Bombadil
That's right. I remember that being a thing. Yeah.
because he got left out of the trilogy of
hmm
movies. And by most theological accounts, Tom Bombadil is almost a representation of the Holy Spirit. Um, because Tom Bombadil is not affected by the ring. He can put the
hmm
ring on and not be affected. He can see anybody hiding with the ring. He
Hmm.
existed before any of the other creatures and all this other stuff. Like there's this whole like deep theological cut of
It
Tom
dives more
Bombadil.
into.
Yeah, way,
Okay,
but
cool.
which is one of the reasons they left him out of the movies.
Yeah.
Because he was too complex of a character for the 6 hours they had.
Which I
Um,
think makes sense. Like I know a lot of people are frustrated. I know there are some diehard book fans that get frustrated with that with the movies, but I remember when I read that part of the books being like, I don't really see how you could do this character justice in the movies the way they were trying to adapt it. So that makes
yeah,
sense.
they have done
Good.
some good stuff with him in the show. I know you haven't watched it yet. But what makes it great for me is the actor who is playing him. Uh, and I don't think it's your cup of tea, but there was a horror series on Showtime like maybe 8, 9 years ago called Penny Dreadful
Oh, I remember the name. Yeah,
that
I didn't
starred
watch it
Josh Hartnett and a few other people, big name people. Um, and he played Frankenstein's monster.
though.
And let me tell you, he gave like Oscar worthy performances or Emmy worthy performances on that series. That was like some of that show was hot garbage, but
Hmm.
every scene that dude was in as Frankenstein
Hmm.
was a masterpiece. Um,
Hmm.
Frankenstein's monster. So seeing like as soon as he started talking, I'm like, oh, it's you. And I got so excited because I love Tom Bombadil, and then I love
Hmm.
that actor, and I'm like, bet, you're great. You get good stuff with Nori. That story's
Hmm.
developing well. Um, yeah, there's just there's really good stuff, and Galadriel is like and Aragorn, or not Aragorn,
Hellbrand.
not Halbrand, Hugo Weaving's
Elrond.
character.
Elrond.
Elrond.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was saying Aragon. I'm like, that's the wrong one.
Aragorn.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
Aragorn.
There's so many
Sorry,
vowels.
I love Aragorn. So. Mm.
Yeah. But Elrond and Galadriel are just like both kind of kicking butt and taking names with stuff. But yeah, it's definitely worth it. And I will say that the 6 episodes so far in season 2 are fire. Um, and if you haven't watched it, they're short and sweet, but after, oh no, you haven't watched it at all yet. Um, after each episode, Felicia Day does an interview with somebody from the show.
Oh, cool.
So she does like a little talk show after each episode. And that's been kind of nice too.
I
Learning
really
something.
love I really love Lloyd Owen, I think is his real name, the guy who's playing Elendil. I love his interactions with the woman who's playing the queen, I think, in season one. Like I loved some of their conversations and I'm so excited to see. Like it was so funny because my mom watches a lot of British TV and she's got like BritBox and Acorn. Sorry, this is such a weird tangent, but we watched this show called Death in Paradise, which is a British show filmed in oh my gosh, the Caribbean. And and Lloyd Owen was on there, but it took me a minute because he's like short hair, clean shaven, but his voice is so gorgeous. And I'm like, wait a minute. It's Olivia. Hi. It was just so funny. And he was playing a murderer, but he was really
So
great.
him and the Queen also have some super dope stuff going on
Mhm.
in season 2 so far as well.
Nice.
Um, Agatha did start.
Okay.
Agatha and the Penguin Agatha and the Penguin both started within 24 hours of each other.
Oh God, that
Um,
wasn't wise.
and personally, out of the two, I feel like the Penguin was the worthier life choice. But I also love Batman, and I love Matt Reeves's Batman
Hmm.
cinematic universe.
Hmm.
Penguin's just a great gangster show. It's literally is The Sopranos and um, a Batman world.
Hmm.
Uh, but Agatha was interesting, and it got fun by the end of the second episode, but it felt like it was dragging at the beginning, personally. But also, you remember how with Wanda, her shows that she was trapped in were all like classic things we've all seen and stuff.
Yep.
Uh, Agatha, I didn't learn this until after I watched it. Agatha episode one, she's stuck in the TV show Mayor of Easttown.
Hmm.
Mayor like a horse, the
Oh,
mayor of
okay.
Easttown.
Meredith. Mhm.
Um,
Okay.
and so somebody on Facebook did a shot by shot comparison
Hmm.
between the two, and it's exact.
Oh, that's so cool.
Like locations, bodies, vehicles, the whole deal. So
Hmm.
I was like, oh, good for y'all, but what do I need to know this for? Um, it's good, and I think it will continue to pick up. It definitely picked up by the end of episode two, but yeah,
Mhm.
there's a lot of good stuff out there. Um,
Yeah.
and I'm excited for it. But yeah.
Cool. I'm excited
So
too.
uh
Your first, what was your first question? It was, how did you get into?
yeah, how did you get in? Like what took you down the rabbit hole? Because for me it was Firefly, then Doctor Who was kind of like my stair step down. Um,
Mhm.
like what got you into pop culture, nerd culture?
Pop culture, nerd culture. So funny enough, it's fits and starts, I guess I would say because I was a fan of Harry Potter when it was coming out. I read the books as they came out. I remember like waiting by my mailbox for the pre-ordered book to come out every summer. I love that too because I think that's something future generations will miss, like that experience. Like that's an experience that me and my, classmates had that was amazing. Like midnight Barnes and Nobles readings and stuff like that. Um, so I loved Harry Potter. I didn't realize that that was like a fandom. I just really loved it. Um, and so I I saw Star Wars Revenge of the Sith in theaters, but it was because my best friend liked Star Wars and she was like, "Hey, let's go see this movie." And I'm like, "Sure. What? Okay." So like I remember it was really good. I just didn't really know what was going on. But it still affected me because Revenge of the Sith is such a good movie. I then I graduated college, and that year Star Trek Into Darkness came out, and I knew
What
of
is
Star
that
Trek,
for people that don't know?
Star Trek Into Darkness. So it's the second movie reboot with like Zachary Quinto, Chris Pine.
Okay.
So it's one of the Star Trek movies, one of the newer Star Trek movies. I have the OG poster back
Is
here.
that the
Let
one
me see.
that has the big sabotage uh
Uh,
flight sequence, or is that the third one?
oh gosh, I feel like they use that song a lot.
Is that the one that had
Benedict
Cumberbatch in
Cumberbatch.
it?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
I didn't see that one.
So I saw that in theaters with another friend of mine who really loved Star Trek. And I hadn't seen any Star Trek before it, and I absolutely fell in love with it. And then I watched the 2009 Star Trek movie, which is the first reboot movie, and I loved it. Like I loved the way in that movie they shaped Spock and Kirk. I loved the fierce friendship that was forged out of a lot of stuff going on. Like I absolutely loved it. But pair that with that summer after I graduated college, because I studied screenwriting, so I went to Los Angeles and I was interning in Hollywood for a production company called Pillar Segan Shepherd. So they were working on a show called Haven. Haven used to be on the Sci-Fi Channel. It was filmed in Nova Scotia. It takes place in Maine. And so I was watching that show. It was, it is a sci-fi show. I liked it. I really enjoyed it. And that year they had a panel at Comic-Con, like the San Diego Comic-Con. And I remember like they told us interns we could go. And I had no idea what a convention was. So I go back and I told my friend Kristen like that night, I'm like, hey, so we get to go to this thing called like San Diego Comic-Con. And she's like, Ashley, hello. I had no idea. And so I roll up to San Diego Comic-Con to help with this panel and stuff. Like day one and two, I had to dress, kind of professionally, but day three, I could, I was wearing my Haven hat. But like day one, I was like, oh, I really had no idea what I was getting myself into. I need where's the closest Star Trek shirt because I clearly am not dressed appropriately for this. And so I remember that third, second or third day, whenever I didn't have to work, I went to a bunch of different panels that included like, oh my goodness, like person of interest and oh, there was a show that started with a G that was, I don't know. There was a show I can't think of. There was Sleepy Hollow. There were all these other shows that I was like, oh, I didn't realize like these were also like fantasy sci-fi like I didn't know the breadth of fandom. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, most people
And
like if you're not indoctrinated in it, you just think it's the far reaches of like distant things, not that it covers anything you
yeah,
could be a fan of. Yeah.
yeah. And so, but I remember that realization, and I remember also just being that was my first convention experience, and I remember being so impressed with like I could go into any line for any panel, and people would see the shirt or they'd see the hat, and you could immediately start talking to people. And that was really cool to me because I was highly introverted and not very socially, not very socially, just not very good at being social, basically. And so that was the beginning of kind of like my introduction to what is a fandom. For me, that was Star Trek at that point, um, and then learning more like when the Star Wars sequels came out, that was my introduction to Star Wars. And so like just like little fits and starts like that, and now I'm just a full-on avalanche with a whole bunch of stuff that I love.
I mean, but who gets to say that San Diego was their first Comic-Con?
I know.
That's just
You know,
absolutely bonkers.
so the funny part too about that is I won't tell you the full story because it's longer, but the short version is because our producers told us like literally a week or two before the convention that we could go with them. They were like, "We'll pay for your hotel. You just got to find a hotel room." So everything near or in San Diego is completely booked. So our hotel was off like I think it was the 405 or the one of one of those highways. Our hotel was off the last United States exit before you hit Border Patrol for Mexico. That was how far out we had to stay. So we like pull off the last exit. We're at a stoplight. A mile and a half away is the biggest Mexican flag I've ever seen because that's like we're literally at the border. We do this sharp turn and like our hotel is here. Mexico's like here.
That's
But
bananas.
we made it. But we made it. It was so cool.
Well, have
It was
you
an
heard
experience.
also with that what they're I guess threatening for 2026?
No. What are they threatening?
Because San Diego is gouging hotel prices so greatly. Um, Comic-Con International, their contract with the San Diego Convention Center is up in 2026.
Oh,
And if the neighboring hotels don't agree to stop gouging, they're going to move the show somewhere else.
can you imagine what that would be like? Where would they move it?
I feel like they'd have to do Texas,
Yeah.
like to get somewhere big enough,
Yeah.
because you got to be able to have 180,000 people in one building.
Mhm.
So,
Holy cow.
and then it'll never be the same once you do that either. But
Yeah, that's the thing.
so,
But yeah, it is cool though. I'm very grateful.
oh, absolutely. I mean, that's good life experience. So, since then, over the last decade and some change, you've developed FOJ cosplay and Fangirling Over Jesus, and tell the people what that is and why that is and what you do with that.
So Fangirling Over Jesus and FOJ cosplay are the one and the same. The reason I have both names is because sometimes it's easier to get into a convention if I call myself FOJ cosplay. Um, but
I would imagine
I
so.
hate, yeah. But if you look at my business card, it still says Fangirling Over Jesus. So I never want to take, obviously, like it's a ministry. I never want to take Jesus out of the equation, but I also recognize there are places I can't go if I don't maybe put that instead of, something else. But then I can get there and I can be with people. So Fangirling Over Jesus started end of 2019. Um, it is it is I can't believe it's been almost 5 years,
Yeah, dude.
Hector.
I was like, you said that, and I was like, oh yeah. It's like I
I
remember the line like of
Yeah,
just like standing around talking stuff. Yeah.
yeah. And I feel like I'm probably gonna cry because it's just like it's so sweet to me like how it all came together because it came together from so many parts. Large part of it is you. Like I met you and I used to be a full-time swim coach, right? And they introduced me to your books and then I got to meet you back when GalaxyCon was still Raleigh SuperCon. And I don't remember what life was like without you in it now. So you've been an amazing friend and mentor. I didn't know you could pair faith and fandom. And then the other big thing that I credit is in 2019, going to Star Wars Celebration and the same thing, like I am gonna cry. I just, again, as somebody who is super introverted, to be able to stand in lines with people and because I was there with friends, but there were a couple mornings I left the hotel earlier than my friends because they were doing their hair or makeup, which was great, but like I just wanted to go. Like I just wanted to experience the convention and get in line. And you could be in line anywhere and people would just talk to you because we all love the same thing. Like I remember one of my fondest memories of Star Wars Celebration in Chicago was when they premiered the trailer for Rise of Skywalker. Like getting to be on the show floor and watching that trailer with, like thousands of your closest fan friends that you don't know was just so incredible. And I was working for, my church at the time in hospitality, and I was like, okay, my goal as what in my role is like I want people to feel welcome coming into the church. They may not agree with what we're preaching. They may not know who Jesus is. They may not there's a lot of things that could impact somebody coming or not coming to church, but we want them to experience Jesus's love, and we got to get them in the door, to at least try that. And I was like, okay, so why is it that sometimes at conventions it's easier to help people feel loved than at church? Not every church. I'm not saying that of every church, and I'm not accusing any church, but sometimes that happens. You know what I mean? And I wanted to do something. It was just supposed to be a blog. FOJ was just supposed to be a blog that could unite faith and fandom from a girl's perspective, because as somebody who was working in church and as somebody who loved fandoms, and at that point, what was controversial was, and still is, unfortunately, but I love the sequels. The sequels of Star Wars are what got me into Star Wars. I love Rey. I love Rise of Skywalker. Rise of Skywalker is probably my favorite Star Wars movie for a lot of different reasons. And I wanted to provide a place for people to show them that they weren't alone, to show them that their voice mattered, because I knew my voice mattered even if people weren't listening to it in some of the arenas that I was working in. And I remember when I was driving around, I don't even know what I was doing, but I remember where I was driving, and I remember just hearing, like when you hear from God, I just remember hearing the name Fangirling Over Jesus, and I'm like, that's really clunky, but I think it'll work. Um,
Sound like you're describing a Star Wars ship.
yeah. And and then, I started it in December 2019 and January 2020 comes around and I'm like, do like a shirt design. Like I used to do shirt designs and, for our swim teams, for college, for a bunch of different things. Let's do a shirt that's, like fandom on the front, Bible on the back. And so I did that.
It's the
And I
title
did
of your
that for a few
mixtape.
months. Huh?
Title of your
Fandom on
mixtape.
the And I was doing that for a few months, and then at the same time, I had just moved in with my roommate Laura, and she loved Marvel, and so we were watching the MCU from Iron Man forward, which I had never like I don't at that point I'd only seen six Marvel movies, including Infinity War and Endgame, so that's kind of funny. Um, and and then it just spiraled, and now like Sarah, our friend Sarah, like she texted me a couple days ago. She's like, "You have 500 items in your shop right now," and I'm like, I didn't even I didn't realize that we had hit that number, but like, oh my gosh, like and so getting to see what God has done, God basically through FOJ, God has turned it into a clothing and accessory shop that seeks to glorify the Lord through art, through clothing, through accessories. He has enabled me to meet people online and now in person at Comic Cons. He has allowed me to, he has allowed me to be prayed over by people, to pray with people. Um, he's given me a community through some of the darkest things that I've experienced in the last 5 years, from some really bad church hurt, like we were talking about, to the death of my dad, to COVID, to like, it just like, I mean, God has really, really, it's incredible. I'm just, if I sit and think about it long enough, I mean, I start crying because it's just like, God is just so, so freaking good, you know, and it's all him. So.
And one of the things I'll say just in watching your 5 year like growth pattern, just in to say that and keep in mind you had like 2 COVID years out the gate. Um, your growth has been so exponential,
Mhm.
comparatively speaking, of just like how fast you've grown. Because your first booth was half of my little 6 foot table at Richmond.
That's right. Yeah.
And, three of us behind that table for 4 days was like, hmm.
Hmm. That was fun.
It was fun, but it was
It
a
was
tight, it,
cozy.
it was cozy. Yeah, it was cozy. That's what it was. Um, but seeing you go from that to like what you roll in with now to shows is crazy. And like, I just had a
Yeah.
laugh moment like somewhere this year because, you know, even helping you unpack recently at a show, you
Hmm.
had like shirt after shirt after shirt after shirt. And I looked over at my display because I could see my booth from your booth, and I was like, I've had that shirt on display for 10 years. Like, I looked over and was looking at my Doctor Who shirt. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I've had that shirt since 2014. Huh. And I've managed to have 5 shirts in a decade, maybe like eight, because I've cycled, I had a few more, but like, I'm rocking with 5 shirts in a decade, and like 3 or 2 active years of conning. You're already like have a smorgasbord of materials and stuff. Um,
But how many books have you written? A
a few,
lot.
a
Just a
few,
few.
few. Um,
Oh, quite a lot.
but with that, it's just like there's such a personal connection piece to giving people something that they can wear that
Mm.
makes them feel excited and seen at the same time.
Yeah.
Because when you find something that really makes you click with like what you enjoy and who you are, and it feels like a good accessory, like
Mhm.
good clothes and good accessories can really make people feel really confident in their stuff.
Yeah.
Um, because like I know the difference between me when I feel covered and cool versus like I'm not really comfortable in what I'm wearing makes a
Hmm.
big difference. And like, I'll have a handful of shirts that I will wear till the paint falls off because I feel comfortable in them. Like, you know, not even just biased discussion. Like the my Gimli hoodie,
Hmm.
you can barely tell anything was ever on that hoodie. It is black with like
Oh.
some faint edgings of that what used to be text. And that's it.
Mm-hmm.
Because I wore the
Oh,
crap out of that. The Doctor
yeah.
Who shirt you made for me, like, is a staple. Like, people will literally people will show up to shows and
Mm.
expect to see me wearing that on Sundays.
Oh my gosh. That's so
Like,
cool.
they expect the Doctor Who shirt at Geek Church. If I'm not in a costume, because
Oh,
consistently that does track. If you look at my
yeah,
photos from show to show, if I've got
you're
Geek
right.
Church, I'm wearing that shirt on Sundays. And
That's so cool.
like, so people almost look at that shirt as my uniform for Geek Church. And there's just certain things that you feel comfortable and confident in. Like, I feel that way with certain hats, bandanas. I had a bandana that I lost this summer when I was speaking at camps. I lost it in Alabama, and I
Mm.
spent 3 hours roaming an empty golf course looking for my bandana
Oh,
because I really love that bandana. And they don't make it anymore currently.
did you find it?
No, I was very sad. Um, and it's
If you
one
tell
that
me what was on it, I can make it for you.
I know you can. I know you can. It was a band bandana, and I'd had it from a tour, and you know, I know I can make it again. I was just like, but
Yeah,
it had all the
yeah.
attachment. But there's something that really goes for having stuff that fits you, that fits your personality, and I think that's empowering to people. But it's also been really good connections because, like, you've met a ton of people and connected with a ton of people, like, and there's a difference between people that give people stuff to be a bait and switch for
Mhm.
the gospel, because I see plenty of people that's like, hey, let me do this for you so I can tell you. Like,
Yeah.
there's plenty of people I've seen do that. From my perspective, I've seen you just give people stuff out of genuine, like, I want to be a blessing to you. And I've seen you give a lot of people stuff, and you've had some really good interactions with that. So let's talk about that for a second. Like, what have been some of your good responses with that, or not good responses? Have you had anybody be like,
Oh,
no, that's garbage, and like throw it at you?
no. Thankfully not.
Good, because
I
that'd be a
think
mess.
um I've been really lucky to have wonderful conversations and meetings with people. One of my favorites actually was at GalaxyCon. It was with I apologize because I'm gonna try to say his name correctly. Paul Sun-Hung Lee, I think is how you say that middle part. Um
Pyro slash command or what?
Parson Teva and the
Yeah.
Mando and Ahsoka and yeah, of course. So I got to meet him for the first time at GalaxyCon Richmond and earlier this year, and I've commented on a few things of his on Instagram and stuff. But what was really cool about that week, because he was coming to GalaxyCon Raleigh this past July, and like 2 days before the convention, they announced that he was going to be in the next season of Murdoch Mysteries, which is a Canadian period detective show. So totally different than, Star Wars, etc. Um, so they announced he was going to be in it, and I'm like, so we love that show. It's really cool. Like we love it because of a lot of different reasons. One of the really fun reasons is actually because the lead of the show, yeah, I think his name is, I'm gonna say it hopefully correctly, Yannick Bisson, I think is how you say his name. He was in a show years and years ago called Sue Thomas FBI, and it was about a woman who was deaf and she worked for the FBI as a lip reader. Anyway, that's a really random tangent, but you should look it up because it was great. Um, so Paul is in that show, so I was like, I want to make him a Tumblr. So I made him a I've never made any Murdoch mystery stuff before. So one of the lines that's always in the show, there's a character in the show called George, and one of the kind of quotes is "What have you, George?" And so I adapted it for Paul's character, whose name is Admiral what's his name? Inspector Choi. And so I did a silhouette of his character with his costume and whatnot and said, "What have you, Inspector Choi?" And so I took it with me. And before I even got to give it to him, I walk up and he and his wife are both there, and he's like, "Oh, it's Fangirling Over Jesus," and I'm like, "Do you know who I am?" Like, oh my gosh, that was amazing. Like, just because you don't eat, I think of how many people these guys meet, not just at multiple conventions, just at one convention, one day of one convention. Think of how
Yeah.
many people,
Thousands.
thousands. And you know my Instagram handle? Like, oh my gosh. And he remembered me, his wife remembered me. I gave him an Ahsoka slash Avatar themed, I think, Tumblr in March. So anyway, so I give him the Tumblr and he opens it and he absolutely adored it. He was flipping out over it. He asked if we wanted to take a picture, which is really sweet because I've just purchased an autograph. So he took a photo with me and my mom and the Tumblr, and he was like, "Oh my gosh, this is amazing." He's like, "The Murdoch mystery set is a sustainable set, so I'm gonna use this on set, and everybody's gonna be so jealous." And like, it was such a sweet interaction. And what I loved about that too is like and this is kind of going back to the beginning where we were talking about the name. I will my desire and my goal is to never take Jesus out of the name, because even if I'm not having a conversation with somebody about, hey, here's the gospel and here's what I believe, they know, like he knows my Instagram handle. Like it's very clear what, you know, that's kind of clear what I believe in. I believe in Jesus, right? I believe in the Lord. He may not. I don't know Paul's story. I know he is one of the kindest people that I've ever met,
Yeah.
but he's aware, and just to have like an amazing personal connection regardless was incredible. I got to see Emily Swallow again. Emily Swallow is the armorer.
Yeah.
She is a Christian. It was really cool because I have it right here. I redid my armorer shirt, and because I knew I wanted to give her one. So it's got the armor on the front, and then on the back it's got Ephesians with the armor of God. Um, yeah. So that was really cool to be able to give her that. And then getting to see too, like at that same convention, Taylor Gray, Tia Sarkar, and Vanessa Marshall. Vanessa is a Christian, like they're all, voice actors from Star Wars Rebels. Um, and those were wonderful. I had made them stuffed plushy loath cats based on their characters, and they thought they were like, that's not what we were expecting you to pull out of your bag, but these are amazing. Like it was just really cool to get to I just like I I was I had dinner with a friend tonight, and I was like, my biggest goal is I just want God to be able to use me to hopefully be an encouragement for people. And to me it only seems fair, especially for some of these actors and voice actors, like they have encouraged me so much in the storytelling they do. I hope I can encourage them in the same way, like not be the typical like, oh my gosh, I'm your biggest fan, but just like a genuine like, this is how you've impacted like not only my life but other people's lives. Like, thank you for that. And that to me is, I mean, I think one of the clearest examples, and I've had interactions with them a couple times, of that is the Clone Wars trio, like James Arnold Taylor, Matt Lanter, Ashley Eckstein. Um, they are all incredibly kind. I believe, I know that Matt and James are both believers. I'm pretty sure Ashley is somewhere in that vein as well.
I have a comment
And
on that to revisit.
yeah,
Go ahead.
but like, I've met them multiple times now. They are so kind, and they remember who I am. They remember most of the people they meet multiple times, which is incredible. Um, but like it was like James has actually been really cool in a couple ways because when I saw him last in Cincinnati last year, um, we were talking about a variety of things. One of the things I asked him was like, is there anything I could pray for him, over? And so we talked about that. We talked about acting because I'm also an actor, and he had told me about the movie that he is working on called Hidden Blessings, which just came out on DVD, by the way, guys. So if you want a DVD of James's movie, go to his profile because I think the link is there. Anyway, it's super good. And so he offered to like send me the private. He was like, shoot me an Instagram message. I'll email you the private link. You can watch the movie. And like a week later, an email from James Arnold Taylor pops up in my inbox, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like Obi-Wan Kenobi is emailing me. Um,
Did it say hello there?
yeah. He said hello there, and when I responded, I said, General Kenobi. Sorry, I had to.
Nice.
And but he's prayed over me as well. I've been encouraged by his wife and his daughter as
I
well.
mean,
They're like,
just to pause and say, Obi-Wan
yeah,
Kenobi's prayed for you.
yeah. And I have it. I actually have it on one of my saved like wallpaper backgrounds because it's obviously like yeah, like he's the voice of Obi-Wan Kenobi, but just on a personal level too. Like this is what I love about our faith and getting to interact with other believers is like he's done so many things and he's doing the thing I want to do. Like I want to be an actor, I want to be a voice actor. Like I'm working on it. I've got my agent and I'm booking some stuff here and there, but like he's at the level I would love to get to. But Christianity puts us all on the same playing field to the point where like I can pray for him and ask if I can pray for him and he's prayed over me. Like that's so cool, you know? Um and then, you know, like Ashley Eckstein, like she is so kind and we have hugged and cried together and it was really cool. Like I her birthday is the day before mine, so her birthday was Sunday this year and mine was yesterday. And I wished her a happy birthday and, you know, thanked her for who she is and all that she does. And yesterday I woke up to she had sent me an Instagram message, like a personal happy birthday message. And I'm just like, this is so bizarre. I in the best way, like, can I go back 5 years and tell baby Ashley, like in 2019, all of the stuff that's about to happen? Because it I believe in encouragement and I believe in impact and I believe in being a light to people. And to see and I mean this in like the humblest way I can, like to realize, to stop and think about it and realize like God is using me in the ways that I'd hoped, but maybe not in ways I'd imagined, but in the ways that I had hoped.
That part.
I like I it's overwhelming in the coolest way possible. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like
Yeah.
it's really cool. And I just like, yeah, I can't, it's amazing. So, yeah. I think I cry every time I talk to you, Hector.
I hear that a lot. No. So on that note with Ashley, and okay, you know our nerd circles go in weird places, so I don't always take everything I hear as accurate.
Right.
Um, some of my California readers
Hmm.
have told me that Ashley is in their small group in their church ministry. And again, I take what I'm told with grains of salt. Um, but they told me that their small group, which does contain Ashley, actually used Faith and Fandom 7 as part of their small group, which had the Ahsoka Church Hurt chapter
Mm.
in it. And I'm like, are you telling me that Ahsoka went through the Ahsoka Church Hurt chapter and her church? I was like, do I know this as a fact? No, I'm not having that conversation. I don't need to know. I'm like, I'll take the lore and keep moving. I also know that
That is so cool.
at one of the shows, one of the Galaxy Cons I were at, two people bought her book 7
Hmm.
and gave it to her at the show. So I'm
Oh
like,
my
I was
gosh.
like, please don't harass Miss Eckstein with my books. Um, but like they just thought that she would like it. It wasn't like a. harassy thing,
Mhm.
but like it's like that's cool and all. So I'm going to tell you this, and we can transition into some other conversations.
Mm.
And I'm going to leave out the details of this because I don't know if I'm legally allowed to say more than what I'm going to tell you. And I'll tell you the real details after we're stop recording. A friend of mine who is a musician who also has scored two films.
Mhm.
His day job is music, but he's scored two films. One of them actually got nominated for an Academy Award. Um, didn't win, nominated, still cool. Um,
Mhm.
calls me today. It says, I'm going to put you in touch with a music supervisor for a movie studio. So today, while I'm playing Shakira songs and eating tacos at the Hispanic Heritage event at my local college, um, because literally then the dude called me, you could hear Shakira in the background, and I'm like trying to walk away and not fail as a DJ at the same time. Um, there's a movie, a feature length big A-list cast movie that is going to be filming in North Carolina. And one of the scenes that is going to be in this movie needs to feature a worship band, but they can't be good or great. They can't be like
Uh-huh.
Rockstar, like Fog Machine, and like sexy
Yeah.
musicians. They need they need to be 40 something year olds.
Uh-huh.
And he said one of them needs to have a beard and a belly. And so I was on the phone with this music supervisor for this feature film, and they're going to confirm where it's going to film. And effectively, I'm going to help be putting this band together that will be recorded live for this movie. And I might be in it.
That would be so cool.
But
Dude, that's
what the
awesome.
music supervisor did tell me, and this was the cooler part than actually the movie itself, which is still cool. Uh, it would be SAG.
Dude.
I would be SAG's, all the deal.
Hmm. That
Um,
would be awesome.
and so I was like, for that to be the window to that,
Yep. Hmm.
yep. So
That's awesome.
so as we mentioned, with uh Ahsoka, and we mentioned church hurt in some of that conversation. Um, let's shift a little bit because we've talked about the fact that fandoms can be some of the most welcoming and loving spaces,
Hmm.
and how much you want to strive for encouragement. You also mentioned that you had a hospitality ministry that you were over.
Hmm.
But as I think you and I have both experienced in different realms and different lights, church can be some of the most hurtful spaces we face as people. And I don't need you to like go out swinging on people or poo poo on anything specifically.
Let's
But
go.
just like, first of all, here's my itinerary of everybody that can just eat it.
Here's all the names, their middle names, where they live, go tiki
Socials,
their houses.
Instagram handles. Um, I have that list in my heart. I have to
Yep.
work on that. But to ask you this, coming from the place that you've been of being in full-time ministry, feeling cast aside by the church, and I feel like it's an accurate statement, um, to being cast aside. What, question one,
Hmm.
what do you feel like the capital C church as a whole can do better to prevent emotional damage and, let's say, even abuse at the hands of church leadership and church leadership culture?
It's a really good question. Um, I feel like I'm kind of going to answer this from what I wish my church had done a better job of. And the two things that I can think of, this is general, but kind of how I saw it. Um, the church I was at, and I fear that this might be a thing for a lot of newer churches, is some of these new, younger church leaders are reading a lot of what they're reading and putting into practice are a lot of business practices. And I want to expand on that. What I mean by that is like they're reading, the hot books, the hot business things. And I'm not saying that churches like big church, there is an element of that to it, because you've got financials coming in, you've got tithing, you've got buildings that you might be planning, you've got a whole bunch of different things. But I fear that sometimes that is being leaned on more than how do we actually steward people. Um, and again, this is, generalized, so I don't, name names and addresses, but like it's, gosh, what was I gonna say? There it goes. COVID brain is a real thing, guys. It's we get what I've seen a lot happen is we get so wrapped up in the ideas of how we want our ministry to grow, or our buildings to grow, or our numbers to grow. We are not willing to pay attention when concerns are raised. And those concerns may or may not be agreed on, but they come from a heart of help, not a heart of divisiveness. And I know that some people just do want to divide a church, but generally I don't think people want to. And that gets ignored, it gets railroaded over. You're either on the bus or we're gonna drive over you kind of mentality. The other thing that I think, because there, like I know with the church I was at, there was a pattern of those of us who raised concerns about certain things, and they were not all the same things. Um, and we got squeezed out because leadership didn't want to look at it because it didn't align with the business plan or the goal that they had already set, or, X, Y, or Z. The other thing that I think is an issue that I see a lot, and it can lead to a larger conversation, I think, about this, but like women are just not listened to. They're just really not listened to. That's not in every church setting. Like I'm really grateful when I'm in town. When I'm in town and able, I go to an Anglican church in town now, and my roommate actually works for them. And her experience working for them is night and day from my experience working at the church I worked at. Um, Her opinion is respected, it's asked for, it's listened to. And it's frustrating because I think to most of my female friends, like we know how to multitask incredibly well because we have to. And it's unfortunately it's still kind of a guy's world, and so women tend to have to work like twice as hard to get to the same level that guys might, or to be listened to as much as guys might. And that means that we usually, I mean, there's always exceptions to the rule, but like we're very smart, we're very observant, we're very analytical, and it's very frustrating when that doesn't get taken seriously or it doesn't get taken into account. Um, and so that's kind of what I fear is, for some reason gender equality in that sense is still overlooked, I think, in church sometimes. And that troubles me.
Yeah,
It's a really long answer to your question.
that's a good answer.
I'm very
Um,
passionate about it.
So to ask you, like in your own uh journey of hurt and healing,
Hmm.
if absolutely destroyed is 0 and absolutely healed and whole is 100,
Hmm.
where are you in your process of that?
Hmm. Um, Honestly, it varies day by day. If you had asked me this question about 3 or 4 weeks ago, I probably would have said 80s somewhere, 70s, 80s somewhere. Um, I have a very good memory, so it takes me a while. Like I don't forget stuff, and I because of that, it's all. I mean, I think everybody goes through this, but I have to constantly forgive, 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 and it's so hard. Thank God we have God, right? Um, if you with that question now, I feel like I've gone backwards a little bit, and the reason is there's been some other stuff that I've been dealing with. You and I had a conversation about it, but the short version is it was with an acting coach that kind of turned out to be a scammer. And I apologize if you hear weird noises. My dog is going bonkers. Um, but I I get really frustrated when people who say they're going to do certain things, um, bigger things, they don't hold to those promises. And so, in dealing with this acting coach, it's brought up some of that emotion that I was experiencing a couple years ago with my, church and employers. So I'm having to kind of re-go through some of that anger in a different way. Um, so it's definitely a process and it definitely varies. Um, for me, one of the cool things is I've started doing, I'm trying to teach myself how to paint. Um,
By the
Not
way,
just
great
do like,
job on those first abstracts.
thank you. That's so sweet. I appreciate it. Um, it's terrifying because I know I'm an artist, but I struggle calling myself that. And so there's a piece it was the one I shared the little bit of, but I'll share the full one probably later this week. But it's called Ahsoka's Armor, and it's based on Ahsoka and Bucky and loyalty versus feeling abandoned. And there's a whole thing that'll be in my description. But like, it's called a prayed over piece because on the very first layer, before the paint and the varnish is in pen, I literally covered it with prayers, with quotes, with Bible verses, dealing with some of that.
Dude, that's super dope.
Yeah. And that was my way of processing through some of that stuff. And so what I'm trying to do is recognize, okay, we've got some of this anger left. We got to deal with it somehow, or whatever the emotion is, but for this it was anger. Okay, God, like how do I glorify you? How do I glorify you through this anger? You know? And and that was kind of what came out. So I even though I feel like I've taken a few steps backwards in my processing of the church hurt, I I'm just trying to bring it back to God, you know. And so far it's working, I think.
What because we always have better instruction than we do application.
Mm,
Um, what advice or instruction would you have for someone who's experienced church hurt?
Read Hector's book. I mean, but seriously,
Oh,
um, uh, free promo right there. Um,
if they're listening to this, they already get it. No,
um,
nobody's watching this podcast. I'm like, I hate this guy. Maybe they are. Who knows? Haters gonna hate, but thanks for the free streams.
you can take that sound blurb and you can just use it on like a 3-second promo on your Insta or Facebook.
There
Read
you go.
Hector's book. read Hector's book. No, but seriously, I would. Oh, my answers are going to be so random. A few different things. Um, I'll try to keep them shorter. One, go to counseling, whether that is a true and verified counselor or whether that's somebody who's a mentor. I did both because I do have a counselor. I believe in mental health a lot. Um, I saw a counselor. I talked to you about it. I processed it with my close friends who are like family. I processed through it with my mom. I processed through it with my mentor, Lori, who's the woman who brought me to Christ. Um, Seek counsel and talk it out. Talking it out doesn't mean you have to be gossipy about it, but it is a very helpful way of processing. Um, It is also okay to, if you're driving somewhere and nobody's really around and they can't hear you, it is okay to yell at the top of your lungs in frustration and anger because I did that a lot of times on the highway. And that's okay because God hears that, right? God hears our groanings even when we can't say
Words. Yeah.
words. And I am so thankful for that. Um, I did a lot of yelling at the top of my lungs. Um, it's kind of like I think church hurt is kind of like a breakup because if you think about, like you breaking up with somebody, if you're in a relationship with them, that's a very intimate relationship. And if you're really involved with a church enough to have church hurt, that can feel very similar. It's not that you're, breaking up with Jesus, but like you're breaking up kind of with a community that helped lead part of your spiritual route. And distance is good, I think, from that. Not distance from God, not distance from the Bible, not distance from prayer, but distance from some of the people, distance from the location. Like I know for me, there were some people who just couldn't understand my point of view. And I loved them. They were close friends, but I just had to step away from my relationship with them for a little bit because I knew that talking to them wasn't going to be beneficial. Um, so those are kind of my top things. And on it, and just like so much prayer. I'm such a fan of pray throughout the day, all day, every day. Like even the things that seem like silly little prayers, like God, I'm really frustrated right now. I'm really angry right now. I have no idea what to say. Just tell me what to say. Like they don't have to be these long, eloquent prayers that we do in church. Like God wants to know how we're feeling, and God wants to know what we're going through. And I think as much as I talk to my counselor and my mentors, my friends that could help me, I was talking to God so much more. Um, and then I honestly do believe, like for me, like your chapter on Church Hurt and Ahsoka, and then finally watching that episode of Clone Wars, because I think I watched it after going through all that. I finally hit it in Clone Wars. Um, Cathartic. It was really cathartic. And so that was really helpful for me too.
That was a helpful thing for me too, as well, to see her kind of back though in the Ahsoka series.
Yeah.
It's like,
Hmm.
look at you having a reconstructive glow up.
Ahsoka the White, like
Yeah,
Gandalf. Hmm.
with her White Lotus headband that not everybody was paying attention to. Did you notice it?
No.
Ha 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 ha. Not mocking, just excited to tell you this. Uh, um, when she drowned or went under the
Yeah.
water and she came up, her headpiece was gone.
Yeah.
They gave her a new one.
Yeah.
It's a new metal headpiece, and there's literally Uncle Iroh's White Lotus coin is in her headpiece.
I did not know that. I
Yeah.
knew the new headpiece. I didn't realize the significance of it. That is so cool.
So it literally is the Gandalf, the white thing, but they gave her the Uncle Iroh thing, which just going back to, Dave Filoni did Avatar, which you haven't
Yeah,
watched yet.
I know.
But like so he literally Filoni gave her the Uncle Iroh White Lotus.
Oh my goodness.
So once you see her come back up for that last episode and a half or whatever,
Yeah, yeah.
she's got the Uncle Iroh White Lotus headband.
Oh, I
What
can't wait to take a closer look at that and then make a headband about
please do.
it.
I like will buy I'll pre-order that now. Um but so with that, that's also just goes back to the fact that one of the clone troopers has the Avatar Aang helmet.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
on that note, just with church hurt, with healing in that process, you gave good things of what you should do. What are some things you shouldn't do
hmm
outside of just the inverse of those things? But like,
hmm
do you have any missteps or anything that you would want to say? Don't do this, kids.
Um, time out. I'm gonna put my dog in his crate really quick because he's fidgeting. Come on, buddy.
While Ashley's putting her dog in her crate, I'll remind you that you can find the Faith and Fandom podcast on the Glue Network, GLU, which you can find on the Roku channel, along with other faith and nerd-based properties. And you can watch this video on your TV on the Glue Network on Roku.
Ooh, I didn't know that. That's cool.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Um, sit on TV. Things you should not do. I'm really grateful to be able to say I think I did everything I could for what I had hoped, like, because I like the questions that I was raising with my church that kind of led to the ultimate, leaving. I was bringing them up with a good spirit. Um, I was not gossiping, so don't gossip about it. That's not glorifying to God or to the experience. Um,
And even when you and I talked about it, I had to literally like pry it out of you. So,
yeah, because I'm so afraid of like I don't I know that I know that I can be I don't know. I know that my tendency can be to be defensive. I know that it can sometimes be to gossip, and that's something to watch out for. And so I try to veer far away from that, which can lead to that kind of overcorrection. Um, I think one thing that was good for me too, and I think this is helpful for people to know if you're for instance, if you are on a staff, if you're a church member and this is happening, that's a different story. But if you're on staff, so that means you've got a contract or you don't, you've got a salary or something like that. Just because you're dealing with issues with your church does not also mean that you shouldn't, like I talked to a lawyer. Like things got to a point where like, you know, they wanted me to sign something and I was like, I'm not going to sign this until I have a lawyer look at it. And they were like, "Oh, really? You don't just trust us?" And I was like, "I love you guys and I have appreciated being here up until this point, but you're still human and I still need a lawyer to look at this?" And so I think recognizing that everybody involved is still human and not being unkind about it, but being straightforward in that, I think is good. I don't know if that's quite what you were looking for, but those are some things that I learned that I think are helpful. Um, don't expect if you're leaving a church, whether you're on staff or you're a church member, you know, it's I think it looks different for everybody, but it's it's gonna be messy because everybody's human, regardless of if you're dealing with a pastor or not, or I don't know. It's never gonna be easy, and it's always gonna be a little messy because we're all human.
So I know we've spent, the last chunk of this being talking about heavy and pseudo negative connotation stuff. To ask just to take one smaller step down into that well of things,
Hmm.
um, just in the terms of church hurt being a real thing, um, our cultural geek hurt can be a real thing too, where we're can be kind of damaging towards each other in the way we treat other people. Because cons are a really welcoming space, but at the same time, we can be pretty sucky, like
Hmm.
even how we. So, what are some things that you think we can do better in the geek and con world to be more encouraging to each other and to handle things better?
Yeah. Um, my favorite fandom is Star Wars. Star Wars is also, I think, one of the most toxic fandoms at times. Um,
I think it stands to be able to talk one of the most toxic because it's been around longer than most of us have been alive.
yeah, that's a good point.
So it lends a lot of hereditary like
Yeah.
toxicity.
And I think one of the things that frustrates me is like, general you, not you, Hector, but like general you, like you may like a certain part of a fandom, whether it's Star Wars or something else. You may like a certain part of a fandom, but not care for something more recent or vice versa. But there are a lot of different things that get people into a certain fandom. Like I said, the sequels are what got me into Star Wars. I will die on that hill because that's the truth and that's what I love.
Well, the
There,
sequels are what my kids knew first.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
I took my kids to see The Force Awakens in theaters and they only watched the original films to pregame for that because I wanted them to see Star Wars for their generation. And so that was like that's what kicked off Star Wars in my house.
Yeah, I love that. I didn't see the original trilogy until after I saw Force Awakens.
Yeah.
Like, I was, side note, I was the one in the theater because I went to see Force Awakens with a group of friends. We were seeing it for somebody's birthday. And I'm sitting there, and it's the scene where they're on Jakku and the ship blows up, and she's like, the garbage will do. And so they go to the other ship. And all of a sudden it's in the air flying. And of course, like if you've been around Star Wars, you know it's the Millennium Falcon. I didn't know what that was. So I'm sitting there and I'm watching the ship and I'm like, isn't the ship like kind of important? And my friend next to me is like, Ashley, it's the Millennium Falcon. It's like saying, oh, isn't the Enterprise, an important ship in Star Trek? So
Well,
anyway,
what really threw me off that I had not failed, but I just hadn't gone down that rabbit hole with my kids yet is there's a Christian rapper named Andy Mineo who has a really stupid song about Italian culture called Paisano's Wildin'. And he's like uh he goes West Side like I'm Tupac, Star Wars like I'm Chewbacca, and goes like in the song.
oh my gosh.
And that phrase was the only thing my kids knew Chewbacca from.
Oh, that's funny.
And like my kid was like singing that song, and I was like, "Do you know what Chewbacca is?" She's like, "No." I'm like, "Oh, okay, sorry, good."
Hilarious. So yeah. So anyway, I think I think there needs to be a realization that there's different characters, there's different parts of fandoms that get people into that fandom. There's different things that are going to get girls into a fandom versus guys into a fandom. Um, there's different stories that are going to get younger versus older generations into a fandom, and I think we forget that. And I will say, I think as believers, if we're a believer and a fan, I think we need to recognize that even if somebody doesn't necessarily know we're a believer, I think we need to be the first light in that, knowing like in terms of not not necessarily like attacking people, but just knowing and being what's the word? Considerate or thoughtful about that. Um, being a little bit kinder in our reactions, which I know like that's something you and I have talked about. Like I've had to work on that myself, you know. Um, but yeah, it's so frustrating, like how tightly people hold on to how it's so frustrating. It's so like politics. It's bonkers.
Oh, it's
It's,
as divisive as politics. And
yeah, it's
I
like
say this
we just love Star Wars. Come
I
on.
say this with no shade towards you. Um, like you've been more political in your postings in the last few months. Um,
Mm.
and like and that was the one thing I was thinking, like in the back of my mind, I was like, I wonder if she sees is this like political posting is as divisive of bad fandoms. Like just
Well,
be
and I'm only sharing, I'm trying to only share those on my personal account.
no, and I
I'm
don't
not my
disagree
affiliate.
with having
But
political
yeah,
opinions.
yeah,
I don't rock with politics at all. Um,
yeah.
so that's why I don't post it. But I also know how divisive it can be. Um, but it's just one of those things is like there's a difference between having opinions about something and there was I don't remember what the context of it is. I just know the meme. There's a
Mm,
meme of Elizabeth Olsen sitting at a booth talking to a dude.
mhm.
And it's a clip from something. And she says, uh, hating on things is boring. You think it makes you interesting, but it doesn't. I'd rather people talk about what they love.
Yeah.
And for me, I think it's a big deal is that if the only thing you have to offer in commentary about fandoms is negativity, you don't have anything to offer.
Right. Yeah.
Uh, because, and going back to what you said about, there's a responsibility even in the fandom culture if you're a believer, because I firmly believe Ephesians 4:29 that tells us, "Let no corrupt talk come out of your mouth, only what is good for building others up, that it may give grace to those who hear it." The reality is like we look at no corrupt talk as like don't cuss,
Mm-hmm.
but no corrupting talk I think is anything that brings the quality or negative or brings the quality or the value of something downward, and that what we share needs to be able to build others up, because on the same breath Romans or at the scripture that tells us rejoice with those who rejoice, weep with those who weep.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you know somebody's enjoying something and you go, yucking their yum, as the culture says, um, that's not beneficial. And
Mm-hmm.
I would honestly say, I would go as far as to say, you can't be a toxic fan and a positive believer at the same time. Because you're hurting your witness in one capacity or another. Like, because I don't have to enjoy everything you enjoy. I've not seen
Mm-hmm.
Murdoch Mysteries, but like, it's not like I'm gonna be like, curse you, Murdoch Mysteries. Like, I would probably actually really like Murdoch Mysteries. But like, I don't enjoy everything everybody enjoys, and I know not everybody's going to enjoy Doctor Who. I know not everybody's going to enjoy um,
Mm-hmm.
Star Wars or things like that. But I think if we can spend more time actually finding what people love, why they love it, and encouraging them in those things, I hope it's think it's going to help build us tighter. Because, and this is one of those things that I hit at when we do the Faith and Fandom discussion panel, and sometimes at Geek
Mm-hmm.
Church as well, is
Yep.
when you attack something somebody loves, whether you realize it or not, you're attacking them.
Yeah.
Because if they find some piece of enjoyment, some piece of calm, some piece of a part of their identity they connect with in a fandom, and you go crapping on it, they're gonna say, "Oh, I can't trust you with things I love."
Mhm.
It's like somebody that
Yeah.
talks over a song you really want them to listen to in the car. Like, hey, listen to this song.
Yeah.
Um, or if somebody's on their phone when you're excited, "Well, I'm trying to show you this movie thing. Uh-huh. Like, like if somebody craps on something you love, it says you're not safe. And you know, it's one of those things like they used to do this cultural thing posting like, she's somebody's daughter. Like when it came to like, adult industries and things of that nature. Um and people said, but yeah, but she's somebody, period. The same token, it's just like people enjoy things and you don't realize the damage you're doing when you attack
Mhm.
what people love. And again, there's a place for good criticism, but I also think negative opinions should be, I'm not saying limit your freedom of speech, but also don't limit the responsibility of your freedom of speech as a believer.
Yeah.
Um, because you do have freedom of speech, but it's that same thing that we see in scripture of don't use your freedom to glorify your own desires, but to build others up. Um, you have a responsibility, even when it comes to your opinions. Like, try not to be negative, as don't just destroy things people love or attack things people love because it hurts and it makes a big difference. Um,
It
and
makes
that's
me
what,
think of, yeah, sorry.
no, no, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say one of the things that one of the, as you're saying that it made me think too of like, I had to look it up because I can never remember the address, but like Philippians 4:8, um, encouraging us to focus, what does it say? Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. But you could almost substitute in like speak of such things rather than kind of negative speech, I think.
And that's just one of the things that like when somebody enjoys something I don't enjoy, I think I always say like, all right, tell me why you love this.
Hmm.
Tell me. I think that's a way to build it because listen, it's low hanging fruit to swing on stuff that people loves, or it's easy to just jump on the bandwagon. Listen, I was a DC fan through the entire DCEU.
Yeah.
I sat through Batman versus Superman multiple times and the Justice League and Green Lantern, like the Ryan Reynolds Green Lantern pre-DCEU. I've been to every DC movie in theaters.
Mhm.
I get how easy it is to crap on something people love because I watched my favorite stuff be crappy, but I didn't need you to tell me it sucked. I
Yeah.
needed you to say, "Hey, that one part was cool." Um, So I will say that's, one area that we can do better in the fandom culture is to work on building each other up. But I really do think there's a Christian responsibility in the fandom culture to make sure that you're not tearing each other down over because, you know, if you go through Romans 14, Paul's like, don't tear each other down over what you eat.
Yeah.
Um, but I feel like in today's culture, that's like, don't tear each other down over what you consume.
Yeah.
Um, I think that could be a big deal.
I think that's I think that's a good way to think of it. I think one of this, and we've talked about this too, is like as an actor and coming into some of the fandoms and the movies and shows that we watch with the eye of an actor and a writer, having studied screenwriting too and worked in Hollywood and whatnot. I get, and I mean, you've done your fair share of being on sets and doing writing and stuff too and whatnot. Like, it's so one of the things that frustrates me is when people will pick apart the actors or the writing and like you said, like your opinion is your opinion. And one of the things that I was always taught growing up is make an informed decision. And the thing that frustrates me is like a lot of people don't understand what goes into creating a show or creating a movie. They don't understand how many hundreds, if not thousands of people are at working and they're trying to do the best they can and they're trying to make decisions and stuff. And you may not always agree with every decision they make, but that doesn't mean they're going in saying, we're going to make this thing crap. Like sometimes it happens, but they're not trying to do that. Nobody wants a crappy thing to come out of something. You know what I mean? They want to try to create different perspectives on things, or they want to try to bring new stories. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But it's like, let's be kind to each. How can we best be kind to each other as fans? But how, like, you know, how would I was telling somebody, I was like, how would you like it if somebody came up to you at your job and was like, what you're doing right now is crap. It's gonna end up as crap. That's essentially what you're doing when you complain about, you know, when you're selecting out these actors or writers of whatever the content might be and laying negative comments and opinions at their feet. It's like they're they're doing their best, you know. They're trying to do their best, and we have a responsibility too to like, do we agree with everything? Maybe, maybe not. But are we called to love our neighbor? You posted something really, really great that actually struck me. It was, I think, yesterday or the day before. And oh, let's see if I can remember it. And you can correct me if I get it wrong, because I probably will. But it was like, what was it? We're called to love our neighbor, and most of us don't have like anybody I'm so butchering this, but it was like you don't necessarily have somebody you hate, but we just have a lot of people we don't like or something like that.
Most of you don't have enemies, you just have neighbors you don't like.
There it is. And that's so important to remember because it that matters. And sometimes that matters more because it's that sneakiness of either negativity or disagreement or not liking. But in reality, we're still called to try to love those people.
Yeah.
It's I remember reading that and I was like, oh, Hector.
Listen, anytime I post something like that, I'm just talking to myself, and y'all are around for it because that's my personal hey, don't suck anymore situations. All right, Ashley, thank you for all the time you've shared with us. If people want to find you and all of your 500 designs
Oh
on,
my
on your shop, where do they go?
God. Go to God. No, for real, you can find me. I'm most active on Instagram. You can search for Fangirling Over Jesus, or the handle is like at fangirling underscore over underscore Jesus, because that's the thing. Because somebody else said Fangirling Over Jesus. Don't know why.
Somebody has
Um,
faithandfandom.com that
do
doesn't
they
use it.
really?
Yeah, they don't use it. And it's a guess what? It's a sci-fi nerdy Jesus blog that's like Star Trek from 9 years ago. And I'm like, come on, guys.
Oh man. Um, you can go to fangirlingoverjesus.com and then you can go directly to the Etsy shop by searching either for Fangirling Over Jesus on Etsy, or if you go to fojcosplay.com, that will take you directly to the Etsy shop where there are 500 items, and it's still mind-boggling. So, yeah, it's a lot. Those are the things. Yeah.
So from what I see, faithandfandom.com has not been updated since 2019 as a Star Trek blog.
Rude. Mm-mm.
But somebody's paying
So
for that
rude.
that site one day.
Faithandfandom.org. Woo.
Yeah, that's where we be. Um, so you'll be able to find links to all of Ashley's sites and socials on the podcast, as well as links to her stuff. And yeah, and check out all that she does. And you hope you get the benefit of running into her at a con because she has a delightful con presence, as well as if Bucky is in the house. Um,
Yeah, he's coming with me to Tennessee next week.
her dog is more popular than me at shows, just to let y'all know. More people miss Bucky than miss me. Um,
Sarah
so
said you mentioned him on one of your last podcasts. She was like, "When is Bucky coming to Florida?" I said, "I don't know.
oh yeah,
Soon,
I've
eventually."
mentioned yeah, he gets around, man. He's popular. He's gonna be a guest host on like one of the next ones. Um, but yeah, uh, although his bark is pretty fierce. I've only heard it a couple
Yeah.
times. Um,
Is that a
but
sonic screwdriver pen that
it is
he's got?
this is
Oh
12's
my,
sonic screwdriver.
oh
So
my gosh,
check it out.
that's amazing.
For y'all listening to this, one way is green. If you pull it back, it's blue.
Ah! That's cool.
I like that one a lot. I have a mug over here that
Ah,
somebody brought me from England. Like they went to the UK and actually got me a Doctor Who mug from the UK. And so it just holds all my sonic screwdrivers.
oh my gosh.
Um, see, yeah, love it.
That's awesome.
But yeah, you can check all the links to Ashley's socials. Thank you for taking time to listen to us. Remember, you can listen to this podcast along with many others at lovethynerd.com and wherever you
You're like,
find a
I'm sure.
podcast. I was like, wait a minute, where is that at? But you can lovethynerd.com/faith and fandom. And you can go find us at YouTube at youtube.com/at faith and fandom LTN. And you can find us on the Glue Network, as I mentioned during the doggy breakdown earlier. And Ashley, thank you for taking the time to be with us today.
Oh, thank you so much. This is so much fun. I love talking with you.
Me too, dude. Me too. And listen, y'all missed the trifecta of mine and Ashley's booths being together for the first time, like a couple weeks ago at a show. So that was
That
pretty
was awesome.
dope. Yeah. So I have to make that happen again, since
Hmm.
they're gonna always put us in the Jesus block. By the way, that Kingdom Geeks booth is gonna be at the Boone Show too. So
Oh,
um,
cool.
I'll get to talk to her a
Oh,
little bit more. I didn't get to talk to her a lot at the last show. All right.
hmm.
Thanks everybody, and we I don't have a tagline. Bye.